Good morning, everyone. It's Joker, and today we are back with another slime video and the second showcase of the new meta. We are going to look at the Platinum Bulwark. That's the name. Leon. So he is the single target DPS character of the Spirit Master team, while also being a generic support and orb changer, which normally I would be very okay with. I love generic supports and I love orb changers, and if you can combine the two, then that's great. However, I'm not entirely sold on him yet. It might not actually be his direct fault, but let's just take a look. He's Earth, he is Spirit Master, Octagram Demon Lord, a Heart of a Hero, and Fount of Wisdom. He uses a sword, not an Earth Spear, so the meme continues. Again, single target ult. His first skill is both an ult damage and EX ult damage, both of 111%, which is interesting. All teams generally now have an ult buffer, or both ult and EX, but he's doing both at one time, so there is value to that. And it is everybody. It's not only Spirit Master or only Earth characters, it's just everybody gets an ult buff and an EX ult buff, which is good. His second skill is an unrestricted 3 orb change to blues, so changes 3 non-blue orbs. Could be 3 oranges, could be 3 greens, could be 2 and 1 of any of the combo. Any color that's 3 of them is going to be blues, which is great. Fantastic for blue orb teams, because maybe you don't need a full orange convert, or you don't need a full green convert. You need specific weird combinations that pop up every turn. This is great. This is a very good skill for what it needs to be and where it needs to be used. His true attribute, turn 6, 7, and 8, just like any other stacking unit. Valor trait nerfs screens, it's shit. And his actual trait is skill points every 2 turns, which is pretty decent. But let's go ahead and test him out. Okay, I just want to do a quick little bit of science. I want to see how his 222 stacks up against Fern's technically 200, but it's EX and ult resistance down versus ult and EX ult. Is there actually going to be a difference besides the 22%? Let's science that out really fast. Alright, so we're with the Orc, we have the EX ult. Let's go ahead and use Fern's 100 up and down, and then let's see what we can get out of it. This will do good damage because we're type advantage and we have the protector buff and everything. So this does 847k. Okay, well, let's come back and let's see what Leon does instead. Or what Leon's buff does for Fern instead. Alright, we're back. Let's go ahead and use Leon's buff now. So 111, 111. I don't think there's a barrier stone right now. So this is, just raw damage. So we did 837 last time with Fern's buff. So, is this going to be a little bit higher? The same? I don't think it'd be lower, but 837 is what we're targeting, and we do 680. Ooh. Well. Ain't that something. That was an ult and an EX ult. That is unfortunate right there. Quite a bit weaker. Wow. Is that right? No, yeah, that's 680k versus the whatever this number was. Yeah. That's just not a good look right there. Okay, well, that's a bit unfortunate. Yay, science, right? Let's put him on a team. Alright, we're going to use this version of the Spirit Master team, different than what we used yesterday for the Velzard showcase, because I do want to put some variety in here. We've got still the hero, Leon, and Velzard. We've now bringing the free-to-play Ritas, now that I have her skills leveled up. We've got Mirren, who, alongside having that constant heal, which is kind of overkill with the hero's heal, she does have that stacking Earth attack buff and the stat swap, which I actually don't know if the stat swap will be good because the Aegis is going off for defense, and if we suddenly make it lower, or we could make it higher, depending. It could be interesting. And then we're going to bring Earth Jean. weakness resistance and element resistance, and the 300 skill points if we need it. In my mind, she could be put on the team if you lack better options, but it's kind of a stretch. But let's try and use her a little bit. Okay, the good thing about bringing Ritas is that we have a turn 1 orb changer that isn't Leon, so we can just use her. And she has a 10% gauge increase, which is good, because with the traits, we can get a double stack of the masked hero on turn 2. So, the point of the Aegis buff is it's based off of your defense. So we've got Protector Benimaru in the support slot, who has very high defense because he led a defense team, and his trait gives us extra defense if we're really full on HP, which we should be because the Master Hero is keeping us healed. Which means that by the time we get to the nuke turn on turn 8, Leon should have fairly decent looking defense, and then we could maybe stat swap that, or we could... no, that defense buff stays no matter what. So he'll have attack, and then we can send it down. We'll have to see when we get there. But otherwise, Leon's entire job here is to orb change and then buff. And so now we have his ult. That's good. Let's orb change again. Let's ult swap. Let's use some stun strike with Velzard. Now that we have Ritas, who is only swapping ult orbs for Earth characters, it means we are free to send Velzard ults to get that extra stacks of weakness strike. And then Jean, while I normally shit all over her, on a stacking team that has multiple things that we need to use on the nuke turn that sometimes is more than what we have, that free 300 skill points can be useful in very specific scenarios where teams just don't have enough points. This is one of those teams that probably doesn't have enough points, because alongside a couple other 90-point buffs from Leon and Velzard, and then Jean's own 80-point buff, we also have to factor in that we want to use the Frostbite effect on the nuke turn, so that's going to be another probably 100-cost skill by the end of the fight, if you've been using it the entire time, which most blue stacking teams can't. They have a finite amount of points they can get, even less if you're sending ults on a turn, because you just don't get as much skill points back from those turns. So having the extra 300 skill points is going to be useful, for now at least. We might get a unit in the future that does that. So here we've got 3 ults. Let's go ahead and ult swap now, and then that'll take away 1, and then we can just use the orb change from Ritas, because she's only doing 2 and we only had 2, and this leaves us free to send the Velzard ults, which will give us permanent weakness strike on Leon, and then we'll take you out. That way we can only have 1 ult, and we'll send the 5 here. So we're looking fairly good turn 5 right now. Even though we can't stun her, we are still getting the stun strikes, and then we just have to get stacks of the hero. So I mean, it's not a difficult team to run. It certainly takes a lot less time than Divide in general, but also it is fairly boring. And Leon himself, while being a very generic support, which is, again, generally what I like out of characters, he's maybe a bit too generic and a bit underpowered based on that first test. So 111% for everybody for EX and alt damage does look cool on paper. In practice, it is a bit underpowered, but you can literally put him on any team. And a lot of blue teams need an unrestricted blue orb changer, so he can do a lot, which we're going to show probably in the next clip. So, this is turn 7. Okay, let's just use the alt swap and get Ritas out of here. And then that brings in 3 orbs, so... yeah, we will, I think, barely have enough to use everything here. So let's go ahead and swap out. We've got that green orb incoming. So alt swap, boom. Ritas can go away. We'll bring in Mirren or something. Mirren is skill fused, so she's actually going to give more earth attack than what you normally see, because she stacks it at like 15% instead of 10% now every turn, or every 2 turns or something. So it's not going to be the 90% that I think it caps at, but it'll be close. So, okay, yep, thanks for that. Boom. Alright, so there's a heal. We're full HP. We've got the defense trait going. Let's see what we can get here with the Mirren skill. So Leon has 15k defense. and a 16k attack. So let's go ahead and stat swap that and take a look. And now Leon has 16k defense, which means that the Aegis effect will be a little bit higher, and we've got 75% Earth attack from Mirren. So, I mean, okay, sure. Anything to help Aegis, and then we've got 90 and 90 and 80, but you can see that we don't have enough points to use the Frostbite. So we're going to use the Velzard and Leon skill, we're going to use Jean's 300 point skill, and that gives us now enough points to use her other skill, the actual debuff, the Frostbite / stun, and an orb change in case you needed it, but we're not going to send any normal orbs here because we'd probably just kill. And then let's get one more stack of the Masked Hero, and then we can nuke with Leon with the quote-unquote full buffs, and we could watch his ult because it's the first time we're actually going to see it. I'm going to say it's not impressive damage. It is damage, though. I think he's very good for newer players who need orb changing, need an alt buff because they just lack characters in general. But he does 28 million damage, which is really not that big of a deal in this day and age, which might blow some people's minds, but I promise you it's true. So there's that. Let's make him a support character for a team that maybe people are running right now. Maybe. Okay, so currently there's that EX Awakening quest where you can get a free copy of Diablo and a bunch of copies of Fount of Wisdom Rimuru. We're going to put Leon on this team because this team, right now, does not have any alt buff. And while it does have 2 orb changers, maybe you need another one. So, and maybe because your Rimuru isn't skill fused, he only changes oranges and Albus only changes greens, so what if you get 2 and 2 or 2 and 1 or something? We could take care of that with Leon. Blanc, maybe you've pulled her from like the free ticket banner that you've been getting tickets for from logging in, along with with Albus herself. And then Raphael, free to play, or not free, but very, very old character, New Year's of 2023. So maybe you also have them just sitting around. And we're going to show that, Leon can buff this team. It could need another orb changer. It needs an alt buff and an EX alt buff, since most of these characters are EX units. And even though he may not be the most powerful option, because normally I'd put Hinata in here, and she'd have her own alt buff, he can work to support other characters. And I think that's the point, is he's more so, like this hand right here, if Rimuru wasn't skill fused, we wouldn't be able to do this, because it's 1 and 1. But we have Leon, so let's do that. And now we're okay. So let's bring you in, and let's just run it like this, actually. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. So I think Leon's very good for new players. I don't think he's very good for players who have existing units that can alt buff and potentially orb change already. Okay, so this hand, we could use both skills from Albus and Rimuru, and we would be able to convert that. But because I want to just use Leon a lot, because he's the focus, let's just do him again. Boom, boom. And we'll keep those 2 orb changes cheaper for maybe next turn. But Leon definitely fits I think this entire team fits the bill as much more friendly to new players rather than a must-have for older, experienced players who already have units, who already have teams, because they probably already have characters that are doing kind of what Leon is doing, or he just doesn't fit onto a team where that matters. Okay, so green convert, boom. If Rimuru was not skill fused, we would just use Leon again. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, but it would take up all of our points. But I also want to alt swap here. So let's bring Blanc in for Leon. So, boom, there we go. Then we get a double stack here. We're going to try and nuke with both Rimuru and Albus, since they are Fount of Wisdom and Albus is single target. We should have enough power here, because Yamza doesn't have that much HP. Okay, we gotta turn this off. Turn it off. Okay. But, like, for me, is Leon good enough to put on a mainstay team? No, I'm not going to put him on Warriors Mind 2.0. I'm not going to put him on the Freerun team, because those teams already have versions of alt buffs that I just don't necessarily need at all. So it's kind of unnecessary. Velzard with her new buff, like, is cool and nice and flashy and all that, but at the same time, again, I don't really need her on a team, because generally teams focus on 1 or 2 damage buffs. Throwing another one on certainly does increase your damage output, but at the same time, do you have the points to add another 90-point skill on top of everything else that you're using? Debatable. Debatable. Diablo himself is a very, very old EX. He was the very first EX protector. So he is not stacking nearly as quickly, nearly as efficiently as a new protector like the hero. And he's just doing less. Less in general. Alright, what is... This is an entire hand of shit. So let's use Leon, and we'll change whatever is left. Okay, so we'll do Albus. And then we'll take Leon out of here for Blanc again. So, overall, probably a good pickup for new players. Probably because, and I don't mean this in any condescending way, if a newer player were to summon for the Warriors Mind 2.0 team, they would probably get very confused on what is going on. That has a lot of effects that need to be explained. A blue stacking team is very boring, but it is fairly simple. Make blue orbs, press the protector button for 8 turns, and then use all the skills. Essentially is what it boils down to. So let's do the alt swap, right? And then green and orange. Okay, perfect. Green and orange. Boom. Boom. Make blue orbs, press the protector, send blue orbs for another 2 turns, and then we'll go ahead and nuke. Albus is not going to get an EX alt, but she'll have an alt, which is better than nothing. Although Rimuru, you're kind of taking a beating here. Okay. Okay, that works too. So one more turn. Let's alt swap again, turn those into blue orbs, and then we'll do this again, I guess. Boom. Boom. Perfect. Double stack. And next turn, turn 8, we will nuke, and then that will probably be the end of the video. Probably. I mean, you could... Any place that you could think you could put Leon, you probably could, and he'd be okay. It's just, I don't know if I would go out of my way if I already have a unit that is alt buffing, or orb changing, or in some fashion doing what he is doing. Okay, so we have 400 skill points. Let's use the weakness strike. Boom. We're not a synergy team, so that one doesn't matter. Let's bring Raphael in for Blanc. There's a lot of green orbs there. Okay, so 1, 2... Okay, we do have enough. Okay, so let's do the alt resistance down and give ourselves Pierce, which technically we're already going to get from Albus anyway, so that's just kind of a useless effect right there. But Pierce and Pierce down, do the physical and physical down, and then the alt and EX alt damage. So for this run, if we were to bring Fern instead of Leon, we probably wouldn't have had a good time because we would have been down an orb changer, and there were a couple turns where we needed him. But also, Albus would not get half of that buff. I mean, she's still not getting half of the buff, but she would at least get the alt resistance down if Fern was here, but she wouldn't get the EX alt buff. Here, she's getting the alt buff at least, but not the EX alt buff, whereas Rimuru is getting both. So, in this instance, it was probably better to bring Leon, because at least his second skill is doing something for us, because if we were to bring Fern, her second skill is the magic buff and then the synergy buff for everybody, and we're not a synergy team. We have no one to activate that, so her second skill is useless on this team as it's built. So it is better to bring Leon in this instance of this team. Albus took a 2 million, sure. Single target, without the EX alt buff, by the way. So, hey, it worked out. He can work. He does fit onto a lot of teams, and that makes him generically good. And most of the time, I like generic characters. And for newer players, it's going to be fantastic. For older players, again, though, he is probably a bit unnecessary. So I don't know if it's really a good idea to summon specifically for Leon, except unless you like Leon, or you need an Earth unit, because Earth does drastically need help. So, let me know what you guys think in the comments below about this Leon. Am I right on the money, or am I horribly mistaken? Give me your thoughts. But that's it from me, guys. Take it easy, and I'll see you all later.